Welcome to Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, the podcast that deals with all things mental health. We talk to professionals, survivors, and loved ones about their sometimes informative, sometimes uplifting, and sometimes tragic stories. I'm your host of the show, Todd Rennebaum, advocate, recovering addict, experienced sufferer of depression and anxiety, and author of the children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health on the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. Go to saskpodcastnetwork.com and find all the wonderful podcasts I've made here in Saskatchewan. Well, not all of them, but the ones that are on the network anyway. And this week it's a little different. Not really. We're talking about mental health still, but there's a federal election coming up again. And this week I'm speaking to Dale Richardson, and he's a former Bradwell staffer, and he has a podcast called Persist, and, well, he has another one called Talking 306, but the one called Persist is the mental health one, and he talks about mental health in politics. So I'm talking to him this week about just that. Before I play that interview, I'd just like to say thank you to Megan Meyerhofer for her wonderful comments and questions and stuff. And, all the people over the last couple of weeks that have sent comments and questions to me, I always really enjoy that. So thank you. And you know what? If you like the podcast and you're listening on Apple, please go ahead and rate and review the podcast. I won't be mad if you do that. That'd be wonderful, actually, if you did that. Okay. So, sorry, I'm in a bit of a rush for the intro tonight, so I'm not giving a whole lot of information, because if you hear that, there's a dog barking in the background. I'm in a rush because my family's home, and I'm trying to do it quickly in between quiet moments. Anyway, without further ado, here's Dale Richardson.
Persist, the Persist podcast, which is about mental health and politics and public life. I started working on that because there's this guy in British Columbia. His name is Emil Scheffel, and I sort of knew him on the periphery because I used to work in politics in Regina here. And Emil, he was very active in politics in BC. He was a senior staffer in the Premier's office and for the BC Liberal Party. And but Emil over the last number of years had become he started to become quite open with his personal mental health struggles. And beyond that, he started to write and talk publicly about this problem of mental health in politics. So amongst people that work in politics, so that would include political staffers in particular. So people that like me and Emil, people that used to support cabinet ministers or the premier, or people that work in the opposition caucus offices. For whatever party that is, and then obviously amongst elected officials, so politicians, so the people that actually represent us in government. So he started sharing his perspectives on that, and this was in January maybe of this year, so not that long ago. He wrote an op-ed for this online newspaper in Vancouver, where he just kind of talked about it more, and it said that there's politics has a mental health problem, and it really resonated with me because I experienced my own struggles with mental health when I was a political staffer. And based on my work in the podcasting world, I thought, wouldn't it be good? Because one of Emil's one of his messages in this op-ed was that there needs to be more places for people who have or do work in politics to share their mental health story, so that other people can listen or read those stories and see, okay, the people that work in the higher levels of government or in opposition caucus offices or at City Hall or wherever, that that they go through the same things that I do as just a regular non-political person. So I got in touch with Emil and I said, have you thought about doing a podcast? Because he was in the process of launching Persist, which is basically it's a website, wepersist.ca. And at the time, it was just going to be written blog posts from people that have worked in politics, like MLAs and staffers, where they can just write and share their story. And I said, wouldn't it be great to also do a podcast? He said, yeah, I've been thinking about it, but I just don't know how to do it. So we went about setting up the podcast, and we launched that in April. And we did about 3 months worth of episodes, and we're currently in our summer break. So,
yeah, nice. It's funny, when I started this podcast, I don't think there was any mental health podcasts in Saskatchewan, and now there's like 8. It's like, boom, it became a real hot topic instantly, which is awesome. I mean, I support all of them, right? I mean,
Todd, one of the things about why the mental health and politics piece appealed, I think, to both Emil and I, is that even in academia, there really is not a lot of study on the mental health of politicians or people that work in politics. So,
right.
Going forward in this podcast, I'll just say, mental health and politics, and you can assume that includes both elected people and staff. So that'll just be easier.
Right.
But even in academia, there's one professor, and he's in the UK, and he was one of our first guests on the podcast. He's really the only person that studies the mental health of people that work in politics. And he's done some, really incredible work, but he's only one guy. And when we had him on the podcast, we talked to him about that doesn't it say a lot about the topic that you're the only person who's been studying it, and he's been studying mental health and politics for 20 years or more. But even still, he's only one guy, and there's only so much research you can do in the topic when you're just on your own. So it's one of the reasons why it appealed to both Emil and I, is that really nobody, as you said about, hasn't been that many mental health podcasts. There certainly has not been any discussion, at least continuous and more in-depth conversation about mental health and politics. So, I guess we were the ones that wanted to go first into the breach, but sometimes that needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, when I saw when you kind of launched it, I was very intrigued, and I was also like I don't know. I was like, what the hell? Like, who is that a big thing? Mental health and politics? But then, you start thinking about it. It's like, you hear about people going to see counselors and stuff through their work and all types of jobs, but you never hear politicians or their staffers or, but then you also know that it's a very high stress job. And I think it's awesome that you've kind of gone that route with the mental health theme. Something else I was thinking about, there must be a lot of mental health challenges for people that aren't in politics but tried, people that ran and lost. and like there was a really great guy that ran for MLA here in my riding, and he busted his ass for 2 years, and he had all types of volunteers and all types of things, and then it didn't work out in his favor, and I haven't seen him on social media for a while, and I'm wondering, like, that'd be really pretty devastating,
Yeah. No, it's a really interesting point, Todd. And now that you say it, there's probably an angle for Persist to talk to some folks like that. Yeah, I mean, for sure there is.
Like campaigning alone would be a mental health issue.
Well, even you're right. Even for somebody like me, and I worked on many campaigns. I can remember the first real campaign I worked on. It was the 2011 provincial campaign, and it wasn't so much anything that happened during the campaign, but as soon as it was over, and this is it's a common thing amongst people that work on political campaigns. As soon as it was over, I was very depressed. Because you go from, first of all, the routine every day for 28, for 4 weeks straight, every day you go into the campaign office and you do campaigns, like you go door knocking and you put up the signs and you make phone calls. And really it's 28 straight days of just adrenaline, right? You're so excited and you're so motivated to help your candidate win and help your party win the election. And you also form quite often you form very strong bonds with the people that you work with on those campaigns. And then the campaign is over and it's a total letdown because it's like, I mean, I've never done any type of hard drug, but I imagine it's very poor way to describe it, I suppose, but it's like trying to get off of a drug that you've been addicted to, and so that's for sure one aspect of it. But I think what you say about candidates that run and lose, I think you're right. It's for unless you are running in a constituency or a riding or a city ward that you just know you have no chance of winning. Like there's seats around the province that, depending on which party you're with, you know that you will either for sure win or for sure lose. But if you're a candidate and you spend, and not just, like a month where it's the RIP period, but for years in advance, like you said, with this one guy that at a certain point, you think, I have a great chance to win this. And you get people telling you that you have a great shot. And you get people telling you at their doorsteps that they're going to vote for you. You start hearing that over and over and over. And unless you become truly cynical about your chances and just keep working and working and working and win, losing for sure can be a huge letdown. And honestly, Todd, if I can, just be honest, that's probably one of the reasons why I don't think I would ever run.
Yeah, same here. I've thought about it, and I've had people say don't, like people that were staffers, actually, not so much politicians, but staffers, like, Todd, don't do it, man. I mean, there's a whole rabbit hole that we could go down of, the reasons why good people don't run for any kind of elected office anymore. But that is one, is that, I mean, you need a pretty big ego to run for political office in the first place. But you need to have a huge ego to think that you're going to win. And when you don't, it's devastating. Yeah. And like this guy, like the riding I'm in, it's been Sask Party for years, so he knew it was a long shot.
Which riding is that?
The Indian Head Milestone.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Maybe not a long shot, but like the guy who's running against has been in there for years and was maybe.
Yeah, no, Don McMorris, he can be the MLA there for as long as he wants to. I mean,
yeah, exactly. But yeah, he got his hopes up, and I don't know. Maybe he wasn't expecting to win, but he was definitely expecting to do better than he did. And I'm sure that was, that feeling of rejection and what was all this for? Like I wonder what that'd be tough.
It's the most public form of rejection. You said it exactly right, Todd. It's the most public form of rejection in the world is when you run as a candidate in a democracy and thousands of people or more, millions, in some cases, like in the States, they say, no, we don't like you. We're not going to vote for you. And no, we literally do not like you enough to cast a vote for you.
Yeah.
The other closest thing that I can think of that would come close to it is a stand-up comedian going up and doing a routine where they are judged literally second to second. They tell a joke, and if the audience doesn't laugh, that's pretty devastating. But at least 5 seconds later, you can try it again.
Yeah.
With elections, if you lose by thousands of votes, that's a pretty heavy thing to hang on to you for several years. Even if you plan to run again, and if not, then that's it.
Yeah, that's right. I imagine. Well, the majority of people that lose probably don't run again, unless were MLA at one point and then lost, and then they're going to try again. But your first loss is probably the most devastating one. And they're like, no, I'm done. That was too much work. It was too hard. Yeah. But anyway,
you're right. Yeah.
So politicians that do make it. So this is less about the staffers and stuff, but more about the actual politicians, because they're criticized harshly by the opposition, or if they're the opposition, they're criticized by whoever. Like in Saskatchewan, I don't know how many times I've heard things about Trudeau that are like, if he wasn't a politician, you'd be going to the RCMP, like some of the comments that you hear online. And then, so how is that just part of the job, or being a politician, or do you just have to have thick skin, or how do politicians deal with that personal degradation all the time?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question. I think I think that there is hopefully more conversation about and less tolerance for really bad abuse. Social media has of course made things in that regard not just 100 times worse. I would say 1,000.
Yeah.
Because if you wanted to hear, let's say that you're the MLA for Indian Head Milestone, okay? You're Don McMorris. 15 years ago, if somebody wanted to let him know what he thought about him, disagreed with a policy decision or what he was doing as the MLA or what his party was doing, whatever, he would phone, he would try to call, or like a person, like a constituent.
Yeah.
They could call, they could write a letter, send an email, and if Don goes door knocking, they could tell him to his face. Now, anybody is able to pick up their phone and drop a Facebook comment, send a tweet, put an Instagram comment on his post. And it's so much more widespread, because then instead of just Don hearing or reading or seeing that criticism, and it could be harsh, it's instead thousands of people see that, right?
Yeah.
So it's so much more amplified. The thing about having thick skin, I don't like that, because and people say that a lot. You're right. You're just, if you're a politician, you should have thick skin.
Yeah. Toughen up.
Toughen up. You do need resilience as somebody that is in elected office. But I don't think you should have resilience for things like, obviously death threats, or, personal attacks from people in the just general public. You need to have resilience to continue to show concern and care for the people that you represent. I mean, it's the biggest part of the job, right? If people are writing you or sending you emails or sending messages and saying that they're unhappy with this decision about childcare or healthcare or like income assistance, whatever the issue is, you need to have the wherewithal to see, okay, there's obviously people in my constituency care about this issue. I need to get to work on it. That's resilience in that respect. But I having a thick skin towards people that are just incessant.
Personal attacks and stuff. Yeah.
I don't think that should be tolerated. And I think I know for sure, Todd, that things like that for any party, for any people of all political stripes, that for sure is one of the major reasons why good people and credible people don't run for politics. They don't run for elected office.
Right.
They don't want to, just as much, just as there's a risk to lose an election, they just don't want to go through the shit of having somebody spout off at them and call them, just the most horrible, vile things.
Yeah.
But never be held to account for saying that. It's a very wild world, man.
Yeah, it is. I know. I don't even like reading articles on CBC or the Leader Post, and then all the comments, made. It's always like people fly off the handle, and it's like, did you even read the article? Like, you basically just made comments just to bash someone, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've probably stepped over the line a few times. I don't know if I've ever done it on social media.
I mean, who amongst us hasn't? Most of us these days now have, but
I don't know if I have on social. Well, I have Trump on social media and stuff, but I'm a very big advocate for mental health, so I'm always criticizing whoever's in power. It just happens to be Sask Party's been in power since I've started advocating. But I really try not to criticize. I try to criticize more the party or the policies, and less individual people.
Not the people. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Like even what's his name? Everett Hindley. He's like. I don't know the situation. Maybe he's only given so much money to disperse, and I don't know what the situation is. I'm not going to blame him for specifically, but Everett Hindley's, by the way, is the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions in Saskatchewan now. But I try not to attack him personally. I try to, you know what I'm saying.
I do, Todd. One of the things I think that's important for both Emil and I with Persist is for us to point out that this is and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is that this issue, we particularly with Persist and with our podcast, we don't look at it through a partisan lens.
Right.
So we on the podcast, we've had members from the NDP. We've had Liberal Party staffers and Liberal Party members of Parliament. We've had conservative staffers. We're going to talk to city councillors that, in most parts of Canada and in this province, that, they don't technically have a partisan affiliation.
Right.
And it's important to us because, and really, for my own perspective, since I started working on Persist, I do look at other politicians differently. So the best example that I can come up with is, currently. Mm-hmm. So for the last 18 months, we've been in this terrible pandemic, and I am really not a huge fan of most of what Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party does. Mm-hmm. But give or take some things here and there. But I am very empathetic to the fact that for the last 18 months, their lives have been a complete grind, and I don't think it has been a very good time for anybody in that government, particularly the ministers of health, The prime minister, obviously, and anybody that has kind of been in the COVID pandemic, war cabinet,
Right.
and especially staff. There's been a lot of commentary about how the mental health of staffers on Parliament Hill has been terrible during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So saying for us and from my perspective, that's it's one of the key pieces to this whole conversation about mental health and politics. And I think you read this column that Murray Mandrick wrote a couple months back. I spoke to him for it, and he wrote about the issue of mental health and politics. And what kind of it didn't surprise me, but it still bothered me a bit was the response to it. At least people responding to Murray on Twitter was that people were still looking through it through a partisan lens, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And Murray, really to his credit, he tried to beat back those critics because people, after he wrote the article and he posted it, people were saying, well, the Sask Party government still needs to make more investments in healthcare, and they were looking at it really through a partisan lens. And Murray said, but this isn't. I never wrote anywhere in here about that this is partisan, and of course more mental health funding is needed. But don't you think that if the elected representatives, the cabinet ministers that are making the decision to invest more in mental health, that they are able to speak more freely and share their own stories and just even talk amongst themselves? Don't you think that is a good thing to improve mental health
Yeah, exactly.
here in our province? And so, I mean, that's kind of an ongoing challenge, I guess, but I think it's important to point that out.
Yeah, it's funny how in politics it's taboo to talk about it in a way. I mean, or it's a real career killer if they talk about it. So how can they yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. How do they get behind something like mental health when they themselves aren't even allowed to talk about it?
Well, there was a poll of time, I lose track of time these days. This is probably a couple months back now, but there was a poll done by Abacus Data, I think. They polled people and asked them which of these professions would you like? So they gave a bunch of different professions like firefighting, teacher, doctor, lawyer, CEO, like probably 10 things like that. One of them was a politician, and they asked, how would you look at somebody in one of these positions if they shared their mental health story? And people said that for politicians, they would look at them the most negatively,
right?
If they opened up and shared their mental health situation.
Right.
And I thought that was extremely discouraging.
Yeah.
And I guess we can the people can have a debate about this, but I think it just goes to show how little trust there is that people have in politicians and in government, because when you, particularly in the last year during the pandemic, obviously teachers, there's been a lot of focus on them in classrooms and the stress that they've been under.
Yeah. Healthcare workers.
Yeah, exactly right. People in healthcare, doctors and nurses and everybody else. For sure, there's probably, and there has been lots of conversation about the mental health impact on people that work in those jobs. I don't know why it's looked so differently and so negatively at the people that are trying to keep things together during the pandemic. And again, that's regardless of party and of political stripe.
Yeah,
there's not a uniform political partisan affiliation for governments in Canada. You go NDP, conservative. Well, I guess there's a stretch there of conservative governments, but liberal, bunch of Liberal governments in the Maritimes, and then the federal, and then everybody at the local level. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting to me.
Going back to the article you were talking about with Murray Mandrick, that alone, I mean, like, Murray is generally, like, if anyone follows his stories, he's generally a left person. Like,
It depends. Todd, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I've interviewed Murray for my Talking 306 podcast. I've gotten to know him pretty good, decently. Murray he is just very, he is not critical. He's just very suspicious of any government of the day.
Gotcha.
Is how I would describe that.
Gotcha.
Because if you go back and you read his columns during the last NDP government,
Yeah.
a lot of the same themes. So
Okay.
anybody that reads his columns now that was around or has gone back, because as a former political staffer, just to as a quick aside, as political staffers, you do a lot of research and you go back and you read newspaper clippings to see what were people saying in the news about the last government, and then you use that and you compare, right? Murray, it's the same. He wants governments to be accountable. He doesn't like any bullshit. He likes people to be straightforward. So I would not call him left, but he is certainly.
Okay. He just seems left, right? Okay. Oh, okay, good. Well, that wrecks the point I was going to make, but because I was going to say because you worked for Brad Wall, so I thought it was nice that this kind of. Or, okay, even if he's not left, he's a critic of the party, is able to, or the party that's in power is able to speak to someone who worked for someone on, perhaps that party, I guess. So, anyway, I thought it was nice. Anyway, and that you're doing the podcast with someone more center. So, no, I think that's really awesome that you guys are very
like Emile Scheffel. He worked for the BC Liberal Party. The Liberals in BC are certainly more conservative than the federal Liberals, but compared to the Saskatchewan Party, they would be definitely more
center.
Yeah, and Emile is pretty just like many of us these days, or some of us. He has mixed opinions, and I would put myself into that group as well. I don't necessarily concur with everything that the Conservative Party of Canada puts out there, or the Sask Party,
And I'm the same way. Like, I'm generally left, but I also hold them accountable when they're not doing a great job, or certain policies. I'm more center or right, but whatever. So I just really appreciate that you guys realize it's nonpartisan and that you really make an effort not to make it that way. I remember what I was going to say before.
Yes.
You were talking about that poll and how people criticize politicians for having mental health issues, but yet people are always, they don't trust politicians. They want them to be more like down to earth, real people. But when it seems like they do get down to earth, then they're harsh, they're criticized harshly.
That's exactly right, Todd. It is a very confusing, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but it's certainly confusing and disorienting, I would say.
Yeah.
Because, I come back again to my comment about, the people that make the budget decisions, the people that sit around the cabinet table, and this goes back to what Mandrick said. Don't we want those people to understand what's needed, and isn't a way to do that by having them open up, or at least, and not necessarily sharing publicly, right? It's one of the things that we found with our podcast. There are going to be very, very few current especially staffers, political staff, we are likely not going to be able to talk to too many current political staff on a podcast, which is a very public medium.
Mm-hmm.
But if people are at the legislative building in Regina here or anywhere else around the country or on the Hill, if they're able to just talk amongst themselves about, and I've talked about this, I had the last boss that I had in the Premier's office. I'm so grateful to him because I was able to tell him about my mental health struggles. Just that, some days, Paul, I just don't have the energy to come to work. I wake up and just think, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
I just going into a physical building today and sitting there is just is a nightmare for me.
Right.
And he went, okay, do what you need to do to feel better.
Nice.
And if there's more conversation, even within the halls of government, that trickles down to the politicians, to the cabinet ministers, to the premier,
or trickle up.
Trickle up, yeah. and that is how progress is made. There have been some tragic events. Like one of the MLAs, one of the Sask Party MLAs, Derek Myers, his daughter died by suicide last year.
Mm-hmm. Just days after the election, wasn't it? Or before the election?
Before. And I think it just, it's one of those, it's so devastating, but it helps move the needle for people in the province.
Mm-hmm.
And you never want a situation like that. And you think, well, why do we need a tragedy to move things forward? But
yeah.
But that's most of the time when you look through the course of history, that's where progress is made on things. Is there's a big event which is emotional for a lot of people, and that's how change is made often. So
yeah, unfortunately, I know you have to go real soon. Do you mind speaking real quick about women in politics and the mental health challenges they have?
Sure. Yeah, I was talking with a couple of people about it yesterday. Actually, it's so when I said earlier about dealing with the shit with the social media, harassment on Twitter and Facebook and everything like that, women, I believe, feel that more acutely than men do. So, like you talked about thick skin, I think it's just and I don't agree with it, but I think it's probably true. Women have less of a tolerance for wanting to wade into that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame them. Why would they want to? But it's certainly something that it's a major factor into one of the reasons why less women run in politics. And I would say that that's probably more the case for conservative leaning parties. And I mean, I could get into that another time, but but across the board, the pressures of politics, I think the family pressures and the household pressures that women feel like they feel, that's been widely talked about. Just the ongoing pressures of working in politics and representing your constituents 24/7. Like the people I was talking to about with yesterday, they said you can't really turn off when you're a member of parliament or the MLA for Regina Dudney. I don't even know if there's a Regina Dudney anymore. But you are essentially always on. You need to be responding to your constituents' concerns and their issues. And if you're a cabinet minister, that's even more pressure because you're essentially doing double duty. Or more if you have a family. You have your cabinet portfolio, which is a lot of pressure to begin with. Then you're the MLA, and you need to deal with those issues that are not involved in your cabinet files. And then you have your quote unquote personal life, which it's a very, very tough thing to to balance, and it's and it can be very tough on people's mental health. So it's for sure a huge barrier to getting more women running in politics, regardless of party.
Yeah.
I think there are starting to be some positive changes being made. Like a couple of city councils, like Regina and Saskatoon, they've both changed their when they have meetings. So city council meetings used to be like they would start at 5 p.m. and go until whenever they were done. Sometimes it was like midnight, 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Now they start earlier in the day, and they have a hard cap at I think for both it's like 7 p.m. and because they do Saskatoon more so, they have younger people on those councils, and they have young families, and I've seen them say that we have families that we need to get home to, and this decision about something menial about sidewalk replacements, stop signs, or speed limits. I think that this can wait until next meeting, and I think that that's a very positive thing.
Yeah, the other thing with women, especially staffers, is the whole sexual harassment end of it too in politics, because it is a lot of men. I was just listening to your episode with I can't think of her name now.
Kristen Rayworth.
Yes, her, and it was really interesting about getting into all that stuff. But
yeah, she's in Alberta, and quite thankfully she's quite outspoken about sexual harassment in general. But she did have an experience working in politics where that happened to her in the office, and unfortunately, Todd, that is that is a common thing for many women, that particularly younger women that work in politics, and it's not always like an act of somebody grabbed my ass or touched my breast or something like that. It's more like, I think for many women, or for some women that work in politics, it's more passive, just like
hey toots, hey sweetheart. Thank you very much, Dale, for that interview. I very much appreciate it, and don't forget it's Persist. And you can find that on the Saskatchewan Podcast Network, or you can listen to his other podcasts as well, Talking 306, which is just conversation with people about Saskatchewan stuff, and it's also a really great podcast. Now, next week, I'm speaking to a Bob Renabaum. You might recognize that last name, because it's my last name. It is my dad's cousin. He is I guess he's my cousin too. He's a social worker, and I forget his full title. He says it in the interview, but we are talking about anger and how it affects mental health, or the causes of anger, which quite often is mental health issues, and how sometimes anger it comes up in men, especially, as opposed to sadness and things like that. We talk about treatment for anger issues and all types of stuff. So please check that out. I also want to just thank everybody for listening. If you've been listening for 1 week or from the very beginning, thank you so much. Okay, I'm looking forward to releasing the next episode, which is in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe, rate, and review however you are listening to this podcast. It only takes a moment, and it really helps the show out with getting noticed. This episode has been sponsored by Penny University Bookstore, 3104 13th Avenue. Call 639-571-2186 and check out their online bookstore at pennyu.ca. The Saskatchewan Podcast Network is supported by Connexus. Wellness, however you define it, is achievable. You don't even need to figure it all out by yourself. Talk to Connexus. They'll give you guidance, motivation, and the push you need to reach your goals. They've got you. They're your financial partner, and they know you can achieve your very best, your financial best. Prove them right. Start right at Connexus Credit Union. The Saskatchewan Podcast Network is also sponsored by Direct West. Are you a business owner looking for new avenues to promote your business? Direct West digital billboards are a great opportunity to highlight a new product, new promotion, or anything else you'd like your customers to know about. You can get local, expert marketing help for your business at directwest.com. If you are having a mental health crisis, please call the Canadian Crisis number at 1-833-456-4566. In Saskatchewan, the mobile crisis team in Prince Albert is 306-764-1011. In Regina, it's 306-525-5333. And in Saskatoon, it's 306-933-6200. Don't forget to check out my children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. Sometimes Daddy Cries is told through the eyes of a boy whose father suffers from depression. He sees his dad get sad, rest, and even go to the hospital, all while comparing his father's depression to a physical ailment. Available on Amazon.ca. I'll see you next time. This is Todd Redebaum saying, make your beds, take your meds. Bye.